Okay, I am here with Jack Elder, member of the 1972 Olympic team, and we're just getting rolling here with the video that Jack was kind enough to provide, which features history of luge from his perspective. And Jack, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at the U.S. luge team, and not U.S. luge team, and well, the U.S. Olympic team as it was loading in Denver, getting ready to go to Sapporo. That's Frank Jones right there. And previously, before that, I think we saw a couple of other luge guys. This is from the cockpit of the airplane on the United airplane where they opened up the cockpit and let everybody wander around. The luge team was seated in the back with the hockey team and the bobsledders. The one thing they did do on that flight that they'd never done before was they banned smoking on the flight. For the first time ever, an Olympic team, they were not allowed to smoke on board the aircraft. and the people who were the members of the United States Olympic Committee on board with us were just really pushed out of shape by this. And it was cross-country skiers that basically got it done. They went in and said, we can't tolerate this. This is in the airport in Anchorage, where we'd stopped halfway there on a daytime to refuel. And we're out, everybody's talking, you see, oh no, now we're in Tokyo. That's it. We were supposed to fly to Sapporo, and it was socked in. So they flew us to Tokyo. Then they kept us overnight in Tokyo, into an airplane, into a hotel, and then out the next morning flying to Sapporo. And now we can see Mount Fujiyama.
And with this was the entire team. Nowadays, teams kind of fly out individually. That was different.
Oh, it was huge. It had the entire team, with the exception of the figure skating team and of the ski team, alpine ski team, because the alpine ski team was busy in other locations. Women in one place, men in another, so they were coming on separate flights. And the figure skating team hasn't flown together since the year of, 65, when they lost the whole team, or 63. And they've never flown again on one airplane. Now we're landing at Shitoshi Airport, which used to be a military airport and then became a civilian airport, American military. And as you can see, there's actually snow on the ground. This was in the days when they held the Olympic Games and there was snow. They didn't have the opportunity to make snow because they didn't know how to do it yet. They were still experimenting with it. Now floating, that's Kate Homestead, Blackie Howlett, members of the U.S. hockey team coming through. Because we're last. More hockey. Mark Howe, Gordy's son. He hated people who referred to him as Gordy's son. Then I went downtown. We were taking some shots of what is the Oban, or festival. And they have an ice festival there every year, and it had melted like the day before. And so I go down and take shots of it the day after it's gone. But at the same time, I'm taking pictures of people on the street and film out of curiosity to see what the styles are amongst the people. Very shortly, going to see some guy standing ready to cross the street. He's in high heels, but there's luge and bobsled. See? Oh, yeah. That was all part of the celebration of the Olympic Games in Sapporo.
How big of an event was it in Sapporo? I mean, did you get a sense of, oh, there's the guy in high heels. But did the Olympics kind of take over the city?
Absolutely. They built an entirely new public transit system, subway system. And you could not get from one side of the town to the other side of town in less than an hour. It was just jam-packed the whole time. There was no hotel rooms that were available for anybody. The town was sold out. The people there, when they built the luge run, we'll talk about that later. Right now, you're looking at the dining hall. They had a quad dining hall in the village. And it had 4 different types of restaurants in there for each of us. And this was the U.S. leather jackets that they issued to us for our opening ceremonies jackets. We could wear them after opening ceremonies, not before, as usual. And then there's some shots looking in at the dining hall, just to show people what it looked like at that time.
And did you try the native Japanese food while you were there?
Oh, I did, but I already liked Japanese food. I got my black belt when I was 17 years old, so I've been going to judo tournaments for years, and there was a lot of Japanese Americans in my community, so that's pretty normal stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Japanese food back then was as, widespread, so you must have been kind of a trendsetter.
But not at all, not in my community. Pretty normal in our town. These two tall towers right here were the women's housing, and this is the little guard gate that you had to bypass in order to get in there, and they had armed guards to keep the men out. One little French guy in a French women's parade uniform did make it in. We were told. This is the Plaza of Flags, just outside the dining hall. And the main gate is right there. You see people coming by. I thought it was strange in an Olympic Village to watch people walking by with guns. That's the first thing I went, whoa, oh, that's right. Biathlon, they have guns. This is housing for the men. Vast majority of it. All this housing turned into apartments and housing for a retirement community after that. Yeah, wasn't just plain apartment buildings, retirement only. And that would have been an American, and that would have been Fred Hushla walking along with his hat on. This is the main gate, and you can see the crowd of people there. I don't know about the games that you went to, but everywhere we went, there were those people. This is from the luge run at Mount Tinea. You showed the start for the men's start, looking out over the Sea of Japan, I think it is. And here's a start from singles. Somebody doing badly, probably me. But if you look, it's down into the snow. Yeah. It was a non-refrigerated track. It was carved out of the snow and set up. It was done in a national park. And when the games were over, they pulled it all out and returned the grounds to its original state. They did the same thing with the bobsled run that was built there, which was adjacent to it, but not very close. I mean, it was a half a mile away.
How long was the track?
I'm guessing now. I can't remember. Men's start, 1,000, 1,100 meters. The doubles was right around 600. And it was the last of the Jan Steller courses, built with the classic Jan Steller drop curve, as they call it. You go in at one level, you get to the middle, and then all of a sudden the bottom drops out of it. And it was the same. He was the same designer that they used for Villard de Lans. You can see how the walls are cut almost on a dish shape rather than in a round and with no overturn at the top or turn back in. You have to remember, this is a Super 8 film, right. Handheld. Right. And so what you see is probably the only recorded extensive luge track work of that games, because all of the camera work in these games were handled by Japanese because they wouldn't allow NBC to bring in their own people. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. They had commentaries. Chris Schickel, I think, was locked into a closed room the whole time that he was there. Getting down close to the finish curve there.
Do you remember how to do that?
That's me in the striped jacket.
Nice.
And I still have that hanging in my closet, and that is me as well. I drew number 1.
Really?
Yeah, so I started number 1. So I knew I was going to be the first one down the track, and I knew that was going to cause a lot of attention. I was really, really concerned that I would embarrass myself. It is. Okay. 1A. And I had 3 runs. The first 4 or 5 people had 3 runs because the left handle broke loose. And so those of us who had runs to begin with, then we got to dump our first run, and that was good because it was my slowest.
And who are you sliding here with?
Frank Jones from Massachusetts, who I think he lives in Mass now, and he winters in Florida. I just got an email from him asking me if I needed a hinterman for the Masters race, and I said no. I'm concerned about surviving it myself, let alone him. Frank and I went back a long ways. I got him into the sport after he'd been kicked out of the town because he was sleeping with the commanding officer's daughter.
Now, you got into sliding through the military?
I did. I was stationed in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, and I met Jim Higgins. And he had a USA warm-up suit on, and I thought, I want one of those. And so I asked him what he did, and he told me, and I said, sounds good. Where can I do it? I just figured that anything he could do, I could do.
And so was your first sliding experience then in Koenigsee?
Actually, it was in Davos, Switzerland at the World Championships in 1965 was my first ever race. I was scheduled to be in a race in Innsbruck in late 64. The winter was 64, 65, but it rained, canceled. So it was 5-6 weeks later we had a World Championships. And I went there, and so my first ever race was in a World Championships. I know, you don't do things like that anymore. That was a Japanese that went by with a yellow stripe. And we did get a lot of good double shots on it because I had somebody who I was convinced, I told him how to do it and where to stand and just get there and take photos of it, and you get quite a bit. You see Italy's at the top right now, and DDR and they tied for a gold medal, down to 100th of a second. And they timed to them thousands, but they hadn't officially adopted it yet, so they couldn't break the tie. That was the British. The British always showed up late and never practiced. That was the way they did things.
Is that the finish curve?
You're getting pretty close to it. That's the Austrians, and they're yellow. And I think that's the finish curve right there, coming around, and you'll see the run out.
What kind of speeds did you see on this track?
Well, the speeds were not big. In doubles, I would say right around 65 miles an hour, somewhere in there. From the men's start, maybe 70, 75.
Yeah, but keeping in mind that there was not necessarily anything to keep you in.
That's Bob Berkeley, 10A. Berkeley and Kavanaugh, they were the other doubles team. And see how quick these guys jump up, East Germans. See? They want to see what the time is. And this is Blackie and Fred Huschla.
And those were the coaches?
Coach and manager. The manager who didn't speak German. This is St. Moritz, Switzerland. We were there, members of the U.S. and Canadian team went down to St. Moritz, encouraged by the Swiss and by the British, who they were going to have a race there, and they just wanted more bodies. And so they were trying to get us to go on the Cresta run. And we were out hanging out with the Cresta guys, and they thought, yeah, let's do it. You guys, you'll have no problem with this at all. We'll get you on the track. And just before we were allowed to go on the track, they decided we couldn't do it because they were going to train for a race called the Race for the Buttons. And Gunther Sachs, who was an industrialist in Europe, who married Brigitte Bardot, held this race every year, and he gave a set of solid gold buttons for your blazer and for your blazer sleeves, cuffs.
Now, there's actually a curve in the current Bob run named after Gunther Sachs.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Gunther, we were sitting on a balcony looking out over the valley there. That's me and getting ready on a luge run. Never walked the track. Walked up with my sled, sat down, pulled off, and ran the track. It was a bobsled track. What can you expect?
And actually, this is almost, I mean, it looks identical to what's there today.
I think it is. I don't think they've moved it. I don't think they've improved it. But we were sitting on that balcony watching all of this. Oh, this is Larry Arbuthnot. Larry won the race, Canadian. We should have a picture there of Jim Murray in the background with a red head and the dark glasses on. Jim is wearing, see that little pink scarf he's got on? That was the uniform in Olan. Now look at this. This is the old Koenigsegg run, the start, and this is when it's closed down, melting, from the men's start down all the way to the bottom. Before, see the sizes of these curves? This is the upper portion. We haven't even gotten the women's start yet. There's the women's start. And the women's and double start. It's still just inside the forest. And that's when you went into the Teufelsmühle, and then the S-curve, and then the straightaway. But here it's coming, this is looking back up the track, coming down to the women's, and this is looking from the women's, or the in between the women's. This was a group. We were having a race that day, and it was raining, so they moved the start down to the doubles area, and then they moved it lower than that because we were hydroplaning, and that was a difficult day. That's me. My wife was behind the camera on this one, and I'm dragging an old gasser that was sold to me by Leonhard Noggenrauf. And Leonhard, I think he won the Europeans a few times, may have won a Worlds at one time or another, but he was one of the stellar sledders at that time. That's Frank Jones in the yellow outfit. Right there, my doubles partner. And as you can see, the sleds were all old, and there were no pods, and they still had leather reins on them, and nobody was, took it very seriously. But look at all the classic old Volkswagens parked around there. It is the winter of 1969-70, the year after I came back to Lake Placid in the February of '69, and then the following winter I went back to Europe, took my daughter, my wife, and we stayed in Germany and in Berchtesgaden for about 2.5 months, 3 months.
And so you were just kind of the de facto American team at that point then?
Anybody who showed up, Bert Izatich would walk up to anybody who showed up and saying, "You're the Mannschaft leader right now." And so whenever there was meetings, I had to go to them, which was drawings and meetings and whatever else. And I had many times that Bert would walk up to me and say, "We need more Americans in the Sweden race, so you guys have to show up." "Yes, Bert, I'll see if I can get some people, and I'll get them there."
Now, what corner is it? This looks like the S's.
Let's see. I think that was the Teufelsmühle. Yeah, and there's the long straightaway. Yeah. See, and that's down into the Z curve. Yep. End of the tape. Oh, nope, here's some more. Just went dark on us for a flash. This is Koenigsegg. Yep. The long straightaway. Yep.
And that's where this is a different track.
And now this is Lake Placid. This is, see, on the trailer there, Lake Placid. This is the old bobsled run site where the current ski jumps are located. The 32 games were held there, and they built the sled run on the track and built it in the same locations as the curves. And nobody knew how to build a luge run. They just built them smaller. So they figured, well, what the hell, we'll figure it out. And you'll see people flying off the track, going out at different times. There's one. I think that was Terry O'Brien. Both Terry O'Brien and Robin Park went out. And then there'll be doubles teams that are doing very badly and barely making it through. I think the time on it was only about 30 seconds for a whole run. There's somebody going off. Who is that? That's Terry O'Brien.
And what race was this?
Well, they had 3 races. They had a national championships and a North American built in together, and then they had a Diamond Cup, which had the Germans included into it, and everybody did it. And then they'd run one race, and then they'd pick out the classifications of the races within the race. So it may be the same race, the results were used for the North American Championship and the National Championship. This is Christa Schmuck, German, and you see there that's Richard Hartmann, the president of later, and that is, not Fritz. And this is Arbuthnot, Robin Parch, 68 team. That's me with my shirt tail hanging out. Kim Summers with the blue sweater there. That's Kim crashing. Kim quit luge after this because he was the agony of defeat on Wide World of Sports before the guy came down that went off the ski jump. And for a year or two, he was the agony of defeat. And all of his friends were calling him and making fun of him. And he just couldn't take it. So he went back to a sport that he was successful in, which was skydiving. I know it sounds like somebody makes up these stories, but that's not true. It's real. I was trying to point out who that was earlier, and that was Joseph Weissmantel. Weissmantel was an Austrian diamond dealer who was really, really good, really successful. Didn't train, hardly ever trained. He'd come driving in his Porsche, unload his sled, and go up there and just knock everybody apart. That's me driving. Yeah.
Were you okay?
Actually, I was, but my partner wasn't. He went to the hospital. That's him being laid down. Another singles race.
Also Lake Placid?
Oh, this is all Lake Placid. This is, going back up here, there's 2 more turns and you get to the top. That's not my phone. You get to the top and let me see, who's that? Oh, that's more of me, I think. That's with a black stripe down it. Parch there. Hartmann, Weissmantel, Christa Schmuck. It was a tough time because they were trying to build a sport, and nobody here in Lake Placid had ever seen one of these before. And at that same time period, they were hosting the 1969 World Bobsled Championships. That was all coming up.
At the exact same time or later that winter?
Well, it was, I think, they were there prepping for it, and I think the actual dates of it was the following weekend after we were going to be gone.
And they would have used which track would they have used? This track, or would they have used the Van Hovenberg track? And why wouldn't you guys not have slid at Van Hovenberg?
They wouldn't let us. They did not allow us on the track at all, ever. That didn't happen until after the games of 72.
And why was that?
Bobsledding didn't like luge, period. They felt that, as somebody said the other day, real sleds have handles. And luge people only paid $100 for the sleds, and they paid $5,000 for a 4-man bobsled. And they felt as though that we were Johnny-come-latelys. They didn't like us. Simple. Now, we should have coming up, I mounted a camera on a sled on the cross piece, which was right in my crotch. And so that's what you're looking at right now. And those are my boots that I had on today when I was racing. Same boots. And this is the dance of a fixed camera on a sled. And what it seems like, it seems more like this than it does some of these nice smooth runs I've ever seen. And as you get down to the end of it, you'll come down through all those little curves, which obviously I made it. And now I'm lifting up the sled, and the camera will swing up and look me in the face.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Jack. We really appreciate the time, and it's great to have you back racing at the Masters here in Lake Placid in March of 2015.
Yes, it is an absolute pleasure, and I find that it is as hard as I remember it being. It's difficult to drive one of these damn things.
Well, best of luck to you, and we'll keep in touch.